Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective. This is Another View.
Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Prostate cancer. It can affect any man, but disproportionately affects African American men. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, scientists are not sure why prostate cancer is more common in black men, but they are studying culture, environment, and differences in the biology of the disease as possible reasons. Our guests today are experts in prostate cancer. Charlie Hill is the president of the Hampton Roads Prostate Health Forum and a prostate cancer thriver. Hi, Charlie.
Hello, Barbara. How are you?
That's great. Thank you so much for finally being here in the studio with us.
Thank you.
We're happy to have you. Golden Bethune-Hill is a forum board member and caretaker of Charlie. Hey there, Golden. How are you?
Great, Barbara.
Thanks so much for joining us. And Dr. Infeanyi Ani is a urologist and oncological disease surgeon. How are you, Dr. Ani?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. And, of course, my co-host for Another View on Health, cardiologist Dr. Keith Newby. Hey there.
How are you?
Happy anniversary.
Well, thank you very much.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you again. Everything all tied into one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I understand we have a special guest visiting with us today. Her name is Miss Marcella Newby, and she is?
That is my youngest daughter, 11 years old, and she wanted to hang out with Dad today.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's
well,
great.
welcome, Marcella. We're so happy to have you here on the show with us today. So we appreciate that. So, Charlie, you have been ringing this bell, yelling from the hilltops about prostate cancer since 2007 when you started the forum, or probably even before that.
Even before, really.
Is it making a difference?
I think we're making a difference because you hear open conversations today at a level and a frequency that did not occur prior to 2007. You're right. We started this journey in 2002. At that time, it was very difficult to get anyone to talk with you about prostate cancer, prostate issues at all. However, here in 2016, more people are comfortable talking about it, and we think that has occurred because we have more women engaged. And I want to make that point initially. The more women we can have involved in this, the better off the entire community is.
So what has changed that you think makes it easier now? What was the barrier back in 2002 earlier that kept people from talking about it?
I think the primary barrier was inertia. Men were not inspired to talk about it, even though they were getting sick and they were dying, and it was a private affair. As more and more women learned that you really did not have to have this happen to you, and if you did what you needed to do earlier, there was the opportunity to survive and do better. I like to say that I'm a thriver and a warrior because I was diagnosed in 2002, and I get a chance to look at and talk with you in 2016.
Absolutely.
That is an absolute miracle based on the way things used to be.
Absolutely. Dr. Ani, I want to ask you this. There is Dr. Isla Garraway wrote this in 2009, okay? She's a prostate cancer researcher at UCLA. She said African American men in particular display increased risk of suffering and death from prostate cancer compared to men of other ancestral backgrounds. Black men are more likely to be diagnosed with prostate cancer, are diagnosed at a younger age, display larger tumors, and are more than twice as likely to die from prostate cancer that is spread throughout the body than white males. Now, that was written in 2009. Is that still true?
That is still true. Part of those reasons, there are various factors that contribute to it. The race does play a role, which is associated with the genetics of the cancer in itself. Diet is also a component to that. Some of the other aspect which we've studied, but most studies don't have any clinical significant association, but access to care is a significant part of that as well, which underscores what Mr. Hill is doing in terms of being able to educate men and their family, their wives or partners, so that they get educated enough to be able to be motivated to seek access if they don't have access, because that's important. But it is true the mortality rate is higher in African Americans. In fact, within the Hampton Roads area, which when I moved here and looked into that, I was actually very surprised to find out that the Hampton Roads area has the highest incidence of prostate cancer in Virginia, in the state of Virginia.
Do we know why?
I don't know. There's nothing that's out there that I can quote per se, but I would probably say it has to do with the population, the demographics in the area. There's no epidemiological study that I can say, okay, this is the reason for that. But when you look, and it's interesting, when you actually look at the breakdown of these populations, for example, the data that I found is initially from 2003. And when you look in 2003, and this is per 100,000 deaths, when you look at Virginia itself, it's about, at that point, when you break it down by race itself, about 55 per 100,000 deaths, and then 22 per 100,000 deaths in whites or Caucasians. Now, when you look at the Hampton Roads area, in Hampton it was 59, and then if you look at Norfolk, it was 69, and then if you look at Portsmouth, it was 45. Excuse me, Portsmouth was 58. Now, if you fast forward to 2006,
and that was in 2003.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, when you look at 2006 to 2010, and you do the same calculation, Chesapeake, it had gone down actually between then to 2006. Now, but still, Hampton was 28, Norfolk 26, but Portsmouth was 35. So Portsmouth still has the highest mortality rate in the Hampton Roads area and higher than the state itself.
No, it's very interesting because I worked on a project with the American Cancer Society on breast cancer, and Portsmouth also has the highest number of breast cancer cases throughout the state of Virginia. And so it makes you wonder what is happening, particularly in that city, that all these people are being affected by these cancers.
Maybe it could be. I'm sure several factors involved, but one, of course, you have to look at is education, understanding of the disease process, and people. And we talked about. We had a show a month about healthcare disparities. I think there is a big part of that where we do not seek the treatment early enough, and we don't take the necessary preventative steps. And I think that plays a big factor. If we're not taking the preventative steps, we're not going to be discovered and until it's too late. And that's what I found even in cardiology practice. I've discovered several people with prostate cancer. Just ask them, have you had a prostate exam? And they'll say no. And I'm like, well, I mean, have you talked with your doc about it? And half the time they're ducking and dodging the whole process. And I think that's part of the issue is just where the prostate is and how you have to get there. It's just a lot of men just have this aversion to wanting to have that exam.
Charlie, we talked about this when Another View used to be on TV, and we were talking about, and Golden, I haven't forgotten about you. I'm coming to you. But we talked about the PSA test and the digital rectal exam and all of that. And are people still tripping about the exam?
Less so. I think the more we talk about it openly, the less challenge some men have. Men who really understand what goes on with the digital rectal exam tend not to have a problem. I've had one urologist who has done an excellent job of explaining what she was feeling for. She was feeling for nodules in the prostate gland. If you had no nodules, that was a good sign. If you had nodules, then we probably need to look at and do something earlier. And when you walk through that with the men, those who are open-minded generally do better. So that's why the education piece is so important.
So, Dr. Ani, by the time someone comes to you, are they already at the disease point, or do you get a chance to help with prevention first?
Well, unfortunately, there's really no real prevention for prostate cancer per se. There are certain things that we've looked at that's been studied that are thought to prevent prostate cancer, but unfortunately, there's nothing that is actually out there. There are things that can help for prostate health, but there's really unfortunately, nothing for prevention. There is a medicine that reduces.
So, in other words, if you're going to get it, you're going to get it.
Unfortunately, there is constant study looking at how to prevent it, but unfortunately, there is no primary prevention right now. However, by the time there are two factors to that. Patients do come to me either they've already have prostate cancer diagnosed by someone else and requires surgical intervention, or the primary care doctor has sent them over because they have an elevated PSA that they've been monitoring and then need further evaluation and subsequently prostate biopsy to then determine if they have prostate cancer.
So if I'm not mistaken, a year or so ago, didn't a study come out or the recommendation that that men get tested older or less or something? There was some disparity
Yes.
about when less testing.
2012, 2013,
okay.
the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force made a recommendation, and I called that the beginning of Tuskegee Light. Because when that recommendations came out, it suggested that there was not enough value or benefit for some men to be tested on a regular basis. So the men who were not really interested in being tested and examined backed away. My fear is 10, 15 years from now, we're going to have a large bubble of men who did not get examined and tested, who are going to show up with metastatic prostate cancer when they go to see Dr. Ani. We already know that when the PSA was fully introduced in mid-90s, that since that time there was about a 40% drop in prostate cancer mortality. We know that. That's been established. So if you're not doing that, you can only imagine that you're going to have an increase in deaths in the future. That's why I call it Tuskegee Light. We need to make sure that people understand that those recommendations did not apply to men of African descent. Those were for men of average risk, white men. Black men still need to be tested and examined on a regular basis, starting no later than age 40. Annual testing, annual exams. In this order: education first, testing second, and then the exams. That ought to be a part of what happens. The American Cancer Society has now begun to suggest that even though they talked about age 50, for average risk men, they're beginning now to move in the direction of age 45 for men of high risk, but then age 40 for men of higher risk. Well, translation, men of higher risk are men with a first-degree family relative, father or a brother, or men of African descent. So we need to cut through all of that and simply say, if you're a black man, then you should be tested on an annual basis at age 40 and continue on.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. Call our experts, ask them your questions about prostate cancer, not only from the male perspective, but also from the caretaker's perspective, which we're about to talk about. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Keith?
Let me throw a comment in real quick. One of the things that I find as a physician is the issue becomes getting our young brothers to the doctor, period. I mean, and the reason why I made that comment earlier about the fear that I think a lot of them still have with the rectal exam is once they get educated, it's a different story, but you got to get them to the doc to get them educated, to get them a little better, situated in terms of that. What I found is personally, as a cardiologist, I get a whole lot of referrals from the emergency room for patients who have come in there for chest pain, have no primary care doc, hadn't seen a doc in years, and they come see me because the ER referred them to me for chest pain evaluation. So as I'm saying, well, who's your primary care doc? I don't have one. And there are a lot of times 45, 50, 55 and older who just duck and dodge the doctor in a major way.
Almost as if I don't go, then I don't hear. Therefore, I don't have to deal with it.
We have a big problem with that. Unfortunately, the correct term is ignorance factor, and I don't mean that in a negative way. Just you don't know. And if you don't know and people don't ask questions, it's just like when that study came out, and I cringed when I heard that study come out. They said you didn't have to get tested. I said, oh, guys going to be running for the hills. They said, oh, great, that's all I need to hear. I don't have to worry about it anymore. And I knew that issue would happen. So that was a big factor, but it's just getting them to the doc, getting them to understand they need to have these evaluations. Unfortunately, so especially with our people, if you feel fine, in a lot of our individuals, especially males' minds, that's why the women are so important, because they will push us to go, where a lot of times we won't go. But in our minds, we say if we are fine, we feel fine, therefore we are fine. And that is not always the case. And half the time it's never the case.
So, Golden, go ahead.
But coupled with that, though, if they feel fine, they're uninsured. That's another factor. And, of course, I run a community-free clinic, and I see men coming in with blood pressures through the roof. So Keith is on point there. They've not gone to the doctor, and that's the last thing on their minds. But I would add that I think since we've started to talk about this, and as I hear from the wives, men are very concerned about their sexual function. So when they hear about prostate cancer, they think, I'm going to be messing up on myself, I can't have sex. And one of the things we've tried to do is to point out all the things they can have. And at many of our programs, we'll have experts come, doctors like Dr. Ani and some of the others who can address those issues with the doctors, with the patients. Once they know that, it makes a big difference. And we have visited with families that the husband couldn't even look at his wife because he felt he could not be a man again.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because the woman has to play, I would imagine, a very key role in reassurance, number one, that the relationship is not going to change in terms of being together. But even if some things have to change, that you go through it together.
That's very important, Barbara. And I think one of the things as women that we have to think about, pay attention to your mate. Pay attention to what he's saying, because that whole issue of his sexual functioning or his being able to be a good husband, that rates so high with men. As women, we tend to blow it off and say, oh, that's not a problem, honey, I love you anyway. That's not enough. You've got to listen to them and understand what they're saying. So I always tell women, make sure you don't blow them off. Don't compare it to breast cancer, even though that's very serious. Charlie has a saying that when a woman is diagnosed with breast cancer, compared to how the men are feeling, the lights are dim. But with the guy, when you say prostate cancer, they feel the lights go out. Now, both of them are serious. I don't mean to minimize in it anyway, the two, but that's the perspective that the men are thinking.
Let's go to the phones because they are lit up. This is great. Hi, David. You're on the air. David joins us from Norfolk.
Yes, I had a question involving supplemental treatments like saw palmetto. Is that any importance to prostate health?
Okay, David, we'll get an answer for you. Thanks so much for your call. Dr. Ani?
Thanks for the question, David. Saw palmetto, that question actually is pretty common and often comes up. Saw palmetto has been advertised as being a natural herbal treatment for prostate health. When it comes to prostate cancer, it doesn't have any association. It's really more so for enlarged prostate. But even then, as urologists and also the body of urology, the American Urology Association, we don't actually advocate using saw palmetto. And the reason for that is when studied and compared to placebo, which placebo is basically if you get given sugar pills, which has no effect, there is no difference between the two of them. And the reason that you see that difference, see no difference is when you get the herbal medicine from the stores, there is no quantization. You can't tell. There's some medications you'll take of saw palmetto, and they have a higher concentration of the ingredients than other ones. So there is no regulation to be able to say that each person is taking one particular medication. So we don't usually recommend it, and we don't think it's that helpful, but the experience does vary.
Okay, Charlie?
David, I took saw palmetto for 3 years because I had a reaction to the medication prescribed for an enlarged prostate. After I stopped taking it, I still had prostate cancer.
Okay, there you go. George joins us from Hampton. Hi, George, you're on the air.
Yes, hi. Thanks for your show. It's interesting.
Thank you.
I'm confused about proton therapy. It seems to be something new, and there's not a lot of the facilities in the country. Of course, Hampton University has their own program. Is this something new, different, or is this a variation on radiation treatment?
In terms of effect of how treatment is done for prostate cancer?
Yes.
Okay.
As how effective is it compared to the other treatments?
Okay.
Surgery versus
You can go and I'll add on to it.
radiation.
Okay, thanks, George, for the call. Dr. Ani, you want to start?
Sure. So proton therapy is really, it's radiation therapy. It's not anything different. I think a lot of times when you see the advertisement, because it's such a technological equipment. And I actually had a patient ask me about that as early as yesterday, where they see the laser light and they think that you're using a laser light and you're treating the cancer, but that's just the localization. But it is radiation, just like the intensity modified radiation therapy or external beam radiation therapy, which is previously used to treat prostate cancer, is just different way of delivering the radiation therapy. The idea behind proton therapy is to be able to localize and minimize potential side effects of radiation treatment. And as far as the centers, if I'm not mistaken, there's probably, I think, about 8 to 10 centers within the nation. It was initially started at Loma Linda in Loma Linda Institute, and they pioneered the start of it. So the treatment does vary, and it is comparative, but the goal is essentially to try to minimize side effects with radiation therapy.
Okay, Charles?
George, Dr. Ani's right on point there. I had external beam radiation, and I experienced some collateral damage. Had I had more targeted proton-type radiation, I may not have had that damage. The time I had the radiation, the proton therapy was not as developed, certainly to my satisfaction. I do think it's one of the therapies that every man should consider. We don't promote any of the specific therapies. We just like to make sure you know about them. So it is a viable therapy, but it may not be the best therapy, just like surgery would not be the best therapy for each man.
Okay,
I think one of the questions that I'm sure some of the listeners are probably going to know is when you're making a choice between surgery and proton therapy or external beam, is there any, criteria that says, yes, this is a better choice than another? Because I think one of the things, that I even hear, of course, I'm not a urologist, so I just kind of hear the takes on from different people. I know some people advocate proton therapy, some people advocate surgery, some people advocate external beam. Either way, I think what needs to be heard is what makes the decision to say this is a better treatment. Because then you hear comments about surgery. Some people talk about sexual dysfunction. Mm-hmm. I've heard people say once you have that, it's gone. And you hear all these different things. And I think that's going to be one of the questions that people may not want to ask in open forum. I said, let me just ask and throw it out there.
No, that's good. That's actually a very good question. It's on an individual basis. No one can actually tell you there's any one treatment that's actually better. Nothing has ever proven that. So it's on an individual basis. For example, if you have a 70-year-old walk into your office with prostate cancer, when you look at the 70-year-old, depending on their physiological age, so when we talk about age, we have chronological age. You're born, you age, you get to 70 years old. However, all 70-year-olds aren't created equal. There are 70-year-olds that run marathon or run half a marathon. They bike 30 miles a day. Like they are very active. They can put 20-year-olds to shame. Then there are 70-year-olds that basically sit around and they're sedentary. So the way you treat a 70-year-old that's basically a super athlete is not the same way you treat a 70-year-old that sits at home all day long. So in that case, when you look at it, then you talk to the person. You weigh the side effects of each treatment. So when you talk about radiation, just like Mr. Hill mentioned in terms of the side effects you receive with radiation, you explain that specifically to them. When we go on the, for that group of patient, you may offer them radiation versus surgery. For the one that's very active, if let's say, for example, they have voidance symptoms, let's say they have an enlarged prostate, a significantly enlarged prostate. Well, if you do radiation to that person, their symptoms may get worse. And you explain that to them. If you took their prostate out, they're going to pee much better, and they'll never have to worry about their enlarged prostate anymore. So you look at the different aspect. Then the other spectrum of that is if you have a 50-year-old male that has prostate cancer, and this is all assuming it's localized. In that case, same thing. You talk about radiation, and then from the surgical standpoint, you do go into detail, and you have to be specific and true to your description as far as the side effects. You can't sugarcoat it because expectation is very important. And when you don't set the expectation correctly, they're going to either feel this went great or went horribly, even when it's going according to plan. So when you talk about sexual function, it's very important. So when if you want to discuss surgery with them, you do have to tell them point blank, you're not going to get an erection probably for 3 months, 6 months, and even at times a year. With radiation, same thing happens as far as erectile dysfunction, but it's more a gradual process before it falls off. With surgery, you have the ability to do a nerve-sparing prostatectomy where you leave some of the nerves behind and then they can recover down the road. So you tailor that specifically as you discuss
There are so many different options, but hold on just 1 second. If you're just joining us, Another View on Health, Dr. Keith Newby and I are talking about screening, diagnosis, and treatment of prostate cancer with Charlie and Golden Hill of the Hampton Roads Prostate Cancer Forum and urologist and oncological disease surgeon, Dr. Infeanyi Ani. So all these things are coming at you at one time. And I want to talk to the couple I have in the room right now. Because, number one, how critical is it to have both of you at the table when the doctor is explaining all of these options?
Absolutely. Absolutely is critical. I mean, Dr. Ani mentioned localized. It means it has not spread. There are terms that will float out in those conversations that are extremely important. However, it is something that you can navigate, and a man should always have someone with him who's taking notes, who is testing, and who can review what was discussed once they leave the doctor's office. But again, the case is made for having continuous awareness and education so that these things will actually be absorbed over time. So I'm glad you asked that question. I simply said, call me. If you don't have anybody to go with you to the doctor, I will go, because I know how important that is.
Well, and people go ahead, Charles. Golden. Excuse me.
I would do the same thing. And I would say, I have the advantage of being a nurse, so I understand a lot of this, but I tell the women also, call either one of us. Make sure you write the notes down. And to our healthcare providers, it's critical they speak in layman's terms. We have a tendency to talk health talk, and we think we're being clear, and we're not. So you raised the point very well, Barb. Tell the doctor, explain to me in terms I can understand. And that's a part of the literacy we teach patients.
And to the two doctors in the room. No, but I just wanted to say, because what I hear from patients sometimes is, I really want to ask my doctor to re-explain it or whatever, but I feel like, they're in a hurry and they just think I should know this. So is there training for you guys, or is there something a patient can say? Does it offend you if they say, I don't understand? Explain it again.
Well,
Keith, I'll start with you first.
Well, for me personally, and I think Charlie can attest to this, I keep things very layman term when I discuss it, but I pay attention to the patients. I can look in the eyes. If I get that deer in the headlight look, which sometimes I get, I know I've gone way over top, but I pick that up, and I think that's not something I think you can be taught. One thing I've learned in medicine, just like any other field, you have bankers, you have lawyers, you have doctors, any professional person, is all about perception. And that person, as you're talking to somebody else, as a host, when you're talking to somebody, you can look in their eyes and
Absolutely.
tell they know what you're asking them, and you'll adjust your tone and your rhetoric according to what you pick up when you see them. Every doctor doesn't have that same ability, to be honest with you. But I think if you take that into account, I listen to Dr. Ani, I could tell, he's pretty on point with his patients. I could just listen to his descriptions. They're on point. They're very defined and detailed, but yet, he's not using all the terms that would make somebody else give that deer in the headlights look.
Dr. Ani, you want to respond, and I'm coming to you, Charlie.
No, I think Keith is perfectly correct. For me, your physician should not be offended if you say, I didn't understand this, can you explain it? If they're offended, then you may want to consider, either, let them know directly, okay, I don't know why you're upset, I just need to understand or you may have to consider something different. But I think it's like for us, because the area of, especially for prostate cancer, the area of prostate is something that is very unfamiliar to a lot of men, even though there should be, and this is why it's important with the education. For us, we have a lot of pictures in our office that show the anatomy, and we use that to explain. I tend to draw a lot to be able to explain what I'm describing so that they can follow. And usually at the end of the conversation, I look them in the eye and say, do you have any other questions? Do you understand what I've explained to you? And then, are you sure? They said yes. And this is also where it's important, where the wives do come, because the guys tend to just look at you and fold their hand and just nod while the wives make notes. So that's why it's important. So.
Or better yet, what I get is usually the wives will come in because the docs will go back to tell the wives, and the wives will ask, well, what did the doctor say? Oh, he said I was okay.
Well, Charlie, go ahead.
I think you are modeling how it should be done. Now, I'm proud to say that Dr. Newby is my cardiologist. So what you hear with Dr. Newby is what I hear when I'm in the exam room with him, that same tone, that focus in addressing my concerns and questions. I also have seen Dr. Ani work with patients. So if people want to hear how it should be done, you have two great examples of physicians who know how to relate and communicate with patients. If you don't have that, I strongly suggest you get another doctor.
Gotcha.
That's extremely important.
Let me ask you a question, Charlie, because I know when women talk about breast cancer, and the first time the doctor says you have breast cancer, a very dear friend of mine just went through this. She said, all I heard after the words breast cancer was wah, 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 wah. I mean, is that a similar response from men? I mean, did you have that type of response?
I didn't believe. When the doctor told me I had prostate cancer, I just did not believe it. So I took the approach, well, there must be a mistake. So I ended up getting three opinions before I accepted it, because I was not feeling or experiencing anything that would suggest a problem, which allows me to say early stage prostate cancer that has not spread has no symptoms. And that is where so many men get caught. I didn't have any symptoms, and I was going to walk away from that diagnosis because I just didn't believe it.
Wow.
But Charlie, I think it's important you say that your PSA levels were going up, and you consistently followed that. That's how he was diagnosed.
And that is a critical point. I was diagnosed with a PSA of 2.1 with a normal digital rectal exam. So the clinical facts didn't suggest that I had.
So what is the PSA number, and where does the concern come in?
Well, I'm going to let the doctor speak to it, and as a patient, I will tell you that if you're an African-American man, if your PSA starts getting higher than 2.5, now this has not been supported necessarily by the doctors, but the cases that I have seen, when a black man's PSA goes past 2.5, he needs to go looking for Dr. Ani or somebody who does what he does.
But the point is they should know their numbers.
Yeah.
Don't miss that. Know your numbers. Please
exactly. No, that's true. No, you should definitely know your numbers. So a PSA basically is a protein that's the prostate makes, and there is no normal number. In the past, physicians were we always thought, okay, if your PSA was less than 4, it was technically normal. But PSA is not a perfect test. So the recommendation that the United States Preventive Service Task Force made, they made it based on the fact that we don't have PSA is not perfect. However, I would, just like we've always said, it's a little bit too much of an overcall to say not check PSA. However, it's the best that we have as far as the initial testing. So because it's not a perfect number, there are different things that you have to check. One, you do need to start early detection, especially in the African-American community, because of the significant high risk. But early detection is important for everyone. Two, as you start early detection, then you monitor the PSA. If the PSA velocity is changing, which is essentially discussing how high is it increasing, how fast is it increasing, then that poses a concern. The fact that PSA is not sensitive enough, when you check a PSA by itself, the sensitivity is less than 50%. Mm-hmm. When you add a digital rectal examination on it, it increases to about 60%. So when you look at general screening tests, they're usually higher than that. When you're screening a person, you want the test to be as close to 90% as possible to be a good screening test. However, that's the best we have. So when you do that, then you combine it with other adjunct tests. So if someone presents with a PSA and the velocity has been increasing. In the past, we generally biopsied almost everyone, and we did pick up some low-risk prostate cancer that potentially you could have followed in the right patient, obviously. Mm-hmm. But there are other adjunct tests that you can do. There are some genomic tests now, genetic testing that you can test on PSA biopsies. There are tests now that you can also do that have more markers of prostate, different forms of PSA that you can check to help give you the statistical likelihood that you will pick up a significant prostate cancer. And then there's also MRI, functional MRIs. We call MRI guide fusion biopsy, where with the MRI you can pick up prostate cancer, and you can target that area in biopsy to be more specific. So you
really need those two. We just lost our two callers. I was just getting ready to go to them. That's okay. But so you really need to do the screening and be able to track it so that you know how much further you need to go in terms of testing. Is that right?
Well, yeah, you should be doing the PSAs. The whole terminology as far as screening is concerned, is screening essentially is something that you do as a routine versus early detection. So right now we talk more sort of early detection to be able to then determine if someone should be pursued for further evaluation.
Okay. Go ahead, Keith, and then we'll take a call.
I was going to say, one of the other questions I want to pose out that I know people are going to have this question is how far and when to push. And I'm going to tell a quick little scenario so you understand where I'm going with this. I had a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, who was diagnosed with prostate cancer. His PSA was about 2.5, 3, African-American guy, and the digital rectal exam was normal. Mm-hmm. Now, the doc was going to say, don't worry about it. He pushed it and said, I want to go to a urologist. The urologist, but to get there, he had to fight the doc. Finally, he said, listen, I'm going to go around you one way or the other if you don't refer me. Mm-hmm. So he got the referral and, in fact, had prostate cancer and, in fact, had a prostatectomy because it was actually almost advanced. So the question becomes is A, how often is it an issue that the digital rectal exam is actually normal, or is it that the doc that's doing it doesn't recognize the abnormality in the field of the prostate? And when should the patient push the issue like this guy did?
Good question.
It's a good question. It's a combination. The thought process is, or the idea is that whoever is doing, when a primary care doctor is doing a digital rectal examination, what we're hanging on is that they know what they're doing. So there's no way to get around that. So if they do a digital rectal examination and they don't do it appropriately, then they're going to tell you it's normal. However, the only other surrogate that you have to measure for that is the PSA. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you don't have advanced disease that has symptoms associated with it. So if the PSA is off, then you want to question, okay, well, you said my digital rectal examination is normal, but my PSA is off. I want to talk to someone else. I'd like a referral to a urologist. As far as when to push for it, if you're uncomfortable at any point, and that's, again, where the education is very important. If you are uncomfortable and you think your number is off at some point, but your doctor is telling you, I think it's completely fine, there's nothing wrong with saying, well, can I see a urologist so that they can evaluate me and then make sure that everything is fine. It's not any different than everything else that we do. If your car is having a problem, you go to the mechanic and the mechanic says, well, I think your car is fine, and you know you're hearing a weird sound, you're going to say, no, something's wrong. Right. Look over here. Right. It's same thing.
Charlie.
Dr. Ani nailed that. My case is almost like Dr. Newby described. Golden sat in the office with me after we were looking at some post-surgery results, et cetera, and a different urologist says to me, you would have been dead had you not pushed.
Wow. So the patient, it really is incumbent.
It's incumbent upon the
patient to be able to do some things too. Golden.
And Barbara, that's one thing I tell patients all the time. Follow your instincts. You know your body better than anybody else. That's true with your children. That's true with your spouse. Everything. Follow your instincts.
If your gut is telling you, then make it happen. Barry joins us from Elizabeth City. Hi, Barry. You're on the air.
Oh, hi. I listen to you quite regularly on Fridays. You have some great topics.
Thank you.
I've had two experiences with prostate cancer over my life. In 2000, I started the PSA, and I had the rectal exam. In 2001, they found two sites, recommended a biopsy. They were active. and I opted for external radiation because they were small, and they figured that would be it. But my wife was with me. The doctor explained every single type of options I had for treatment, and like my wife being a retired nurse, she knew the medical stuff. She left the decision up to me. Mm-hmm. I did external beam radiation. I was done. It was good. It was clear, and I've been monitored every year since then. 2015, my PSA went up. I did another biopsy, and apparently one cell had been free, and I ended up with 6 sites. And the only option left for me was brachial radiation, and that was a year ago. I'm in remission, and I get hormone treatments every 3 months, but I'm looking good right now.
Great. Fantastic, Barry.
Good.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. So, again, Barry had his wife. He had support around it. Golden, let's talk about the depression.
Okay.
In terms of how you help your spouse or your significant other or your dad or whomever the man is in your life kind of work through those issues. I would imagine that there's got to be some kind of down days at times.
Yeah, they will have down days, and you will have down days as a caregiver too. For me, it's always good to talk with friends and get through that. Mm-hmm. But I'm very positive, and we've chosen, with all of the health challenges Charlie's gone through, to make a lot of lemonade. Instead of really being down about it. And I think you could look at him and tell he is not sick. But it's important to talk with people about that. And if you're a friend of someone who's going through it, have an honest conversation that they might need to seek help beyond that. And sometimes we do need to talk with professionals to help us. Depression is really bad amongst us sometimes anyway. Mm-hmm. And all you need is something like this to trigger it. And if you find yourself really feeling low, and just get help. People are out there that will help you, and it will make a difference.
Charlie?
We should not forget the children.
Yes.
I've talked with a number of couples whose children know that there's something going on. Dad has cancer. First thing they want to know is he going to die? And while we often talk about and focus on the man and we focus on the adult women in his life, I would say that the children are also impacted because they know something is happening and it's different. So we want to be sure that time is spent educating them as to what's going to happen. When I was diagnosed, the first thing my daughters asked me, since they heard cancer, they forgot about the prostate part, cancer, are you going to die? And the answer was, no, I'm not going anywhere, but are you going to die? And these were 20-something and 30-something-year-old young ladies, and they were concerned about that issue as well.
So we must be
Barbara, I just wanted to add, when you said your dad or anyone, my dad is soon to be 99 in September.
Wow.
Has had prostate cancer now almost 40 years, and he's doing very well. And he's still looking at ladies and having a good time.
Can I just add to what Mr. Hill said as far as children? The other thing also you want to keep in mind is if a man develops prostate cancer and they have a male child or son, it's very important that you communicate as well. A lot of times within our communities, we don't talk, and I have a lot of patients that I will say, do you know if you're any family history of prostate cancer, and they'll say, I don't know, my dad never spoke to me about his health. And we have other patients who say, no, I don't want to talk to my kids about it. I'd rather just deal with it by myself. So it's important to communicate, because that's where we start talking about the high risk of, patient population. If your kids don't know, then they don't know they are at high risk, because the genetics does play a role.
Charlie, there's something major that's going to happen in our area that's going to help more men to get tested and so forth. You want to tell us about it? We've got about 3 minutes left.
Yes, next Friday, July 1st, we're going to have the first Home Run for Life event in Hampton Roads. This will be an event at Harbor Park. It will be an early prostate cancer early detection event, which means that there will be education performed and delivered by urologists. There will be a PSA blood draw, and there will be digital rectal exams, all performed by urologists. The sponsors are, of course, the Norfolk Tides, Urology of Virginia, Centera, and the Hampton Roads Prostate Health Forum. What we hope to do is establish this as an annual event at the ballpark, and we want to get the message out to all men who need to be receive more education, who need to be tested and need to be examined. Come out Friday night, July 1st. If you choose to come and participate fully, you will receive a ticket to a future home game. So we want you to come out. The focus, again, is the education piece. I also want to mention that knowledge, faith, and early detection matter most. We haven't talked much about the faith piece. You don't go through cancer, and particularly prostate cancer, with all of the issues if you don't have faith. So we want to, we're not going to ask you who to have faith in, what to have faith in, but we want to say faith should be in that mix.
Absolutely. And with that, we are out of time, you guys. This has been a fabulous conversation. Thank you so very much, and we will be right back.
I'm with Marcellus, and you all are checking out Another View on WHRV 89.5. Don't go anywhere. Check us out.
And welcome back. Necessity is always proven to be the mother of invention. Just ask Edward Burt Oliver Jr., the creator of beard butter. Yep, I said beard, as in facial hair butter. Oliver was having trouble growing and maintaining his own beard, so the NSU graduate created a grooming product that works so well he can hardly keep up with the orders he receives. Our Lisa Godley spoke with the 25-year-old entrepreneur about making his mark and taking his slice of the multi-billion-dollar male grooming market.
I was growing my beard, but it wasn't at the level that it is now. And it got to a stagnant stage where it wasn't growing and it was rough to maintain. I was to a point I was going to cut it, but I was so accustomed to the look of having the beard, I liked it. And I said, I don't really want to cut it. Let me see if it's another option. I gave some other products a try, but they weren't catered to my type of hair.
That's when Edward Burt Oliver Jr. went to his best resource, his mom. She was already making several organic products, so he knew she'd know what to do.
That is a way I could come up with something to make my beard look nice, feel soft, smell good, but still keep it organic where I don't break out or anything like that. We worked on that. I was going out and I had it on. My beard was looking better. It was shiny, it was softer, it was smelling good. It was easy for me to maintain.
And people started to notice.
I was out when I first made it. And a lot of girls kept asking me, what does that smell? It smells so good. And I was telling them it's my beard. And I didn't even know what I was going to name it before I made it. The next day, it snapped in my head. I said, the ladies love this smell. That's the name I'm going with. Ladies love it.
He says his friends started asking him to make it for them as well. Soon, people were asking them where they got it.
One person got it. Then he told the next person. Then they bought something. Then this person came back. And then other people were saying it to start getting to the hands of celebrities. People all over Norfolk State campus have it. People in different campuses across the country. It's been a major experience to a point where just yesterday I got my first order from France.
Edward majored in business management at Norfolk State University, but college was something the Southeast D.C. native never really considered. Then a series of things happened that changed his mind.
February 2009, I was walking home with my buddy, and out of nowhere, some guys ran up on me, robbed me. At the time, it was just a lot going on, losing a lot of friends, and it was just a hectic time. So I was like, man, maybe I just need to go away.
Even though he had good grades, college still wasn't in his plans. Until
I had a teacher, I would always go in his class and wait for my other friends because I had like one class a day because I had more credit than I need. But at the time, they were doing on-site admissions to colleges. So he wouldn't let me in that day unless I went to do some applications at colleges. So I did a couple applications, and I got admitted on site to about 5 schools. And it was like a shock to me because, I never really planned to go to college. But that day when I saw that I could get into colleges and I had the grades and I had the SAT scores to do it, I said, man, why not give it a try? Because I would be the first person in my family to go to college and finish.
Edward Burt Oliver did just that, graduating from NSU in December of 2013. He launched EBO Beard Butter in November of the following year and has been cranking out his product ever since, all by himself.
I make the beard butter, I put the labels in the jars, I pack it up to be shipped all over the country. I do everything. It's a one-man operation.
Edward now has 12 different scents and one unscented version, selling each jar for less than the cost of a ticket to the movies. I asked Edward his favorite scent from his popular line.
It's so hard to pick. It's like choosing between your favorite kid. It's hard. Certain days, certain activities. If I know I'm about to go out to the club or something like that, I like to use the Mango Madness or the Perfect Peach. But if I'm going inside an office building or something like that, I want to use the Aruba Coconut because it has a soft smell, but it still has a nice scent if somebody gets close to you.
To date, Edward has filled more than 2,600 orders, each customer requesting 2 or 3 jars. And as you might have guessed, the 25-year-old has big plans for the future.
I want to be able to create jobs because I couldn't get a job. It was hard to get a job. You competed with so many people. But the ultimate is when I do have kids in the future is to leave something for them to build on.
For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And you can find out more about beard butter by visiting our website at anotherviewradio.org. I'd like to take a moment to invite you to join me this coming Sunday. We're going to be out in Suffolk at the Art of Supper, Dining Among the Stars. It is Sunday, June 26th from 5 to 8 p.m. at the Suffolk Center for Cultural Arts. This is a benefit for the center and also for the Suffolk Partnership for a Healthy Community. It's featuring Michael Curry and the Jay Sennett Trio. So my buddy Jay will be out there. It's going to be fabulous food, a lot of fun, and come on out and have a good time. I will serve as MC, and I am really looking forward to it. If you want more information, dial 923-2900. And, you know, we shared a lot of important information today. And if you'd like to hear it again or share it with a friend, visit our website, anotherviewradio.org, and download the podcast. And don't forget, you can take Another View with you on your smartphone or tablet. All you have to do is download the WHRO Media app. It's available for both the iPhone and Android platforms. And guess what? It's absolutely free. So take us along with you. I'm going on a much-needed vacation for the next 2 weeks, so tune in for a behind-the-scenes experience of the Broadway hit Hamilton next Friday at this time. And Lisa Godley and the Roundtable will be with you on July 8th as we kick off the 6th season of Another View. Wish us luck tonight. Another View is up for 4 Virginia Association of Broadcasters Awards. Overall, WHRO has been nominated for 9 awards, so good luck to all of my colleagues. Our theme music is composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Thanks to Morgan Chase of Hearsay with Kathy Lewis for sitting in for Lisa Godley today. Victor Bowen is our audio engineer, and Naja Whitaker answered our phones. I'm Barbara Hamley. Thanks for listening, and let's get together again real soon, everyone, for Another View.